Bruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on that Pei Hey Amud Aleph, starting with Pei Daled Amud Beis, 6 lines from the bottom. The Gemara just previously quoted a bryce in regards to breaking the bone of the carbon Pesach, and one of the statements in the bryce, Lefi Rebbe, is that Yesh bo shir achila, then Yesh bo mishum shviras ha'etzem. The Gemara now discusses the following: Itmar, Eiver she'ein alav kezayis bosar, b'mokom zeh, yesh alav kezayis bosar b'mokom acher. You have an Eiver, a limb of the animal. In the one place it does not have a kazayis bosar, but in the same Eiver on another place does have a kazayis bosar. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan Omar yesh boi mishum shviras ha'etzem. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish oimer ein boy mishum shviras etzem. There's a machlokes Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Reish Lakish whether there's a prohibition over here of breaking the bone in the place where there is no kezayis of bosar. According to Rabbi Yochanan, nonetheless, there's an iser, a iser deraisa of breaking the bone because there is a kezayis bosar in another place of this aver. Whereas Reish Lakish says if you break the bone in this place where there's not a kezayis of bosar, then it's not going to be an iser deraisa. Says the Gemara, Eisvei, Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shimon Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan asked the following on Reish Lakish, who says that there's not a prohibition over here. Ve'etzem lo tishburu boy. The pasuk says you shall not break the bone of the Korban Pesach. Echod etzem sheyesh alav kazayis bosar. Ve'echod etzem she'ein alav kazayis bosar. The Brisa goes on to say we're talking about both where there's a bone that has a kazayis of basar and a bone that does not have a kazayis of basar. Explains the Gemara, my ein alav kazayis basar. What is meant when it says in this brayse that there's not a kazayis of basar? Ilema de ein alav kazayis basar klal. Ama yesh boy mishum shviras ha'etzem. Everybody would agree, including Rabbi Yochanan, that there's not going to be an iser, a prohibition of breaking the bone if there's not a kazayis basar on the etzem. So it can't be talking about that. Ella lav hochi kamar. Rather, it must be talking about the following, says Rabbi Yochanan to Reish Lakish. Echad etzem sheish alav kazayis basar b'mokom zeh, ve'echad she'ein alav kazayis basar b'mokom zeh. We're talking about where it does not have a kazayis, either one, both of it that has a kazayis basar in this place, or it does not have a kazayis of basar in this place, but it has a kazayis of basar in another place of this aver. So here clearly, says Rabbi Yochanan, we see from this brisa, still there's a lav midiaraisa breaking the bone, even in the place where there's not a kazayis of bosar. On top of Pei Hey Amud Aleph, Omar lei loy. Reish Lakish answers, no, it's not a kasha on me. Why? This is how you have to understand and read the brisa. Echad etzom sheyesh alav kazayis bosar mi bachutz. Ve'echad etzem she'ein alav kazayis basar mibachutz, ve'esh alav kazayis basar mibifnim. We're talking about both whether there's a kazayis basar on the outside, or whether there's no kazayis basar on the outside, but there's a kazayis basar inside, meaning the marrow. Mibmakom shvira, in the place where you would break the bone. Ve'hatanya, and we have a brisa that supports this. Ve'etzem lo tishburu boy. It says in the brisa, bring the pasuk, you cannot break the bone of the Korban Pesach. Echad etzem sheyesh boy moyach, ve'echad etzem she'ein boy moyach. Whether it has a bone that has the marrow inside of it, or has bone that does not have a marrow inside of it. Umani mekayim ve'ochlu es habasar balayla hazeh. How do I fulfill the pasuk when it says you have to eat a kazayis of basar on the night of the 15th? Bebosar she'al gabei ha'etzem, or eino elu bebosar she'b'tor chazim. Is talking about where there's meat, there's flesh on the bone, or is it referring to even the moyach, the marrow inside? Umani mekayim ve'etzem lo tishburu boy. And how am I to mekayim the prohibition that you shall not break the bone? Be'etzem she'ein boy moyach, only in an etzem that does not have marrow inside of it. Or a bone that does have marrow, since that is coming to say I should go ahead and eat it, there's a requirement to eat the basar, maybe includes the marrow, whereby I could, yes, break such a bone and eat the marrow inside. Ve'al tisman, don't be in wonderment, sharei yavo eseh v'yitche lo yisaseh, because we have a principle that a mitzvah aseh here of eating the meat is going to be doiche the lo yisaseh, breaking the bone. Kishu oimer, says the Brisa, ve'etzem liyishperu boy b'pesach sheni, when it states regards the pesach sheni, and the bone shall not be broken, she'ein talmud loymar, it's not coming to say sharei kvar nemar. We already have the pasuk telling us that in all of the chukas haPesach that was taught in regards to Pesach Rishon, it applies over here to Pesach Sheni. So why does it state what seems to be superfluous? Ve'etzem lo yishberu boy. The Brisa concludes whether it's a bone that has marrow or a bone that does not have marrow, there's a prohibition of breaking the bone. So Al Kol Panim, we see that Reish Lakish is supported from what he said, how he explained the Brisa before, that indeed that's both that which has basar on it, or that which has a marrow inside of it, there's a prohibition of breaking the bone. Now the Gemara challenges Reish Lakish's opinion. Again, we're talking about when you have a kazayas basar in one place, and you don't have a kazayas basar in another place. When you break the bone in the place where there's no kazayas basar on that aver, is that a prohibition of breaking the bone or not? Reish Lakish says there's no Easter involved if you're not going to break in the place where it has a kazayas basar. The Gemara challenges Reish Lakish. An aver that goes outside, partially outside of the walls of Yerushalayim. The procedure is to then cut into the meat, the flesh of the animal that went out, until you get to the bone. And then peel back till you get to the place of the animal that did not exit, did not go outside of the wall of Yerushalayim, and then chaytech, cut off the bone from there. And if you want to say Reish Lakish that there's no prohibition of breaking the bone where there is no a kazayis of basar, then we have another eitzah. Then why do you have to then peel all the way down till you get to the place and then break the bone? Just simply peel a little bit so that it's not going to be a kazayis of basar in that place, and then cut the bone, break the bone there. Abai Omar, there's two different reasons that are brought in support for Reish Lakish. Because Abai Omar mishum peka, Abai says because it could cause a crack. If it causes a crack, then that crack can go where there's flesh, and therefore you'll be over the prohibition of breaking the bone. Ravino Mar bekulis. Ravino says we're talking about kulis, the thigh bone that has marrow inside of it. So that's not a kasha, therefore, on Reish Lakish. Tnan Hasan. Now the Gemara brings the following. We've left now the kashas on Reish Lakish. We defended Reish Lakish. Now the Gemara brings a new question and probably starts giving us a background. Tnan Hasam. It states in the Mishnah, Hapigul v'hanoisar mitamines hayadayim. Now, for a person to become tamei, he has to come in contact with an ava to become a rishon letuma, and his entire body becomes tamei as a result. That's midiaraisa. The Rabbanon enacted that when one touches pigul or noisar, they caused pigul or noisar to have a din of a rishon letuma, whereby a person's hands that came in contact with the pigul or the noisar become a sheni letuma, and the metames yadayim. So that's what it states here in the Mishnah. So Rav Huna, Rav Chisda, there are two different opinions. One said the reason for this prohibition of metames yadayim is because of what's called chashdei kahuna. That means to say that there's a chashad that the kohanim were going to then mefagel, we'll soon see, mefagel the korban b'mezid, so that the owner, because they had a hatred towards the owner, thereby it'll be a disqualified korban. Or because the kohanim were mitzatzel in eating the meat of the korban. and therefore these both would be deterrents by making their hands tamei. Thereby they would then be prohibited from touching either truma or kachim. They'd have to then matbil the yerdayim and metire them. So in order to then prevent them from doing that which would be a tircha for them, so then they made it so that there's a gzeira of tumas yadayim. So says the Gemara, Mar masni pigul or Mar masni noisar. One taught that it's going on pigul, one taught that it's going on noisar. Man de masni pigul mishum chashde gehuna. The one who was teaching that the prohibition of being metamis yadayim said is going on pigul, is referring to pigul, that is because of chashde kahuna, like we said, that when one has the wrong thoughts that he's going to then do one of the avodas outside the designated time, or eat outside the designated time of the carbon, then that's mefagel the carbon, disqualifying the carbon, and therefore since the owner who was bringing that carbon will then have a disqualified carbon, the kohen would have disqualified ayidei the pigul. Where the other one teaches that this is going on noisar because of atzlei kuhuna, that the kohanim would leave over the meat of the carbon, causing it to be noisar, only as a atzlus, because of their laziness not to eat the meat. So each one was saying that this is why they made the prohibition that the touching of the carbon will then go ahead of the pigul or the noisar rather, will go ahead and cause tumas hayadayim. Mar masni kazayis or mar masni kabetza. One opinion says that the shear is a kazayis, while the other one says that the shear is a kabetza. Man the masni kazayis ki suroi. The one who is masni, who teaches that the shear is a kazayis, that's because like Easter, the Easter of eating is as a din a din of a shear of a kazayis. And the shear of the kabetza, the man omer says kabetza, that's because that's the amount that a food item can be with other food items if it's a shear of a shear of a kabetza. So now the Gemara, based on all of this, is going to ask the following question. Iboilahu. Until now we have background information. Iboilahu, the Gemara now asks, Yoitze gazu rabbanan tuma oiloi. In regards to a carbon that goes outside of Yerushalayim, carbon pass goes outside of Yerushalayim, is that metame? Does that have tuma derabbanan or not? Mi amin, do we say noisar the gazu tuma the asili atzulei bay? Do we say that noisar they were geyser tuma because they didn't want the kohanim to be misatzil in eating the meat? And therefore they were geyser to then metame their yadayim, they'd have to hassle themselves to metire their yadayim. Otherwise, they'll be metame the truma or the kachim that they come in contact with. Aval yoitze apuke biyadayim lo mafkile biyadayim. But yoitze, which is then taking the animal out with one's hand intentionally, that lo gazu be rabban tuma. On that, the rabban did not make a gezerah of tuma. Or perhaps there's no difference. The same way that they're metame yadayim in regards to noisar, so too they're metame yadayim over here, gabe the yoitze. Toshma, so now the Gemara wants to prove. Eiver sheyatza miktsasoi choitech asher migia leetzem v'kolif asher migia lepereg v'choitech. This is what we brought the Mishnah before. It states over here that if an eiver went outside of the boundary, outside the wall of Yerushalayim, then the procedure is to then cut into the basar, to peel back until you get to the place where it was not outside of the wall, and then cut the bone. The amris gazu be rabbanan tuma. And if indeed you want to say that Chacham did make a gezerah of tuma, then kichatich le mayhave, by cutting it, why will that help? Ask the Gemara, still il metame. In other words, the fact that it's touching the basar, that which was tamei, into the part, if it would be tamei, to the part that is the inside, that did not go out of the walls, that will metame it. The fact that it has intrinsic contact with the internal part. Tumas answers the Gemara, Tumas storim hi v'tumas storim lo metami. No, here we're talking about Tumas storim. It wasn't the exterior, it would only be the interior, the part that is touching. So therefore, it's not going to be metame, the part that did not go outside of Yerushalayim. Ravina the Omar Chibure Oichlin Lav Chiburehu. But Ravina who says that we don't say that the meat that is connected is considered to be a chibur, and therefore we not have an answer of Tumas Starim Lo Metame, because he says that it is Metame. So what we say according to Ravina, Ukaman the Mifrasi Dami, it's like it is separated, like two different parts are separated and touching exteriorly, whereby it should Metame. My Ikalim waiting to say according to Ravina, answers the Gemara, Hakanaga Behadad if it come Metame. It's part of the question. They are touching each other like two separate pieces. The piece from the outside, the piece that went outside the walls of Yerushalayim is touching the part that did not go outside. So by cutting, it's not going to help because it's going to be metame one to the other. Rather, the one that teaches kezayis, you can say there's no kezayis. And the one who teaches kabetza, there's no kabetza. So that you have to answer by saying there's not a shear. Okay. So now the Gemara wants to still prove. Going back to the question that we're starting with, when there's yotzei, did the Rabbanan make a gezerah of tuma like they did in regards to noisar? Toshma hamoitzi basar pesach mechabura lechabura. It states when one who takes out the carbon pesach from the chabura and takes it out from, let's say, the house where the chabura is, or from, if there's two chaburos in the same house, but they go from one chabura to another chabura. So it states, even though he's over a lav in the Torah, but it doesn't make the meat tamei, the meat is still tahor. My lav tahor va'aser is to not mean that it's tahor, but it's still prohibited, it's aser. The yoytze mechabur lechabur ki yoytze chutz lemechitzas damim mafsil. Just like when one goes out from one chabur to another chabura, it's like going out from his mechitza, which is similar to then going out from the mechitza, the wall of Yerushalayim, and it's possible. And yet it teaches its tar. Alma. So we see from here, loy gazu rabbanon tuma. They did not goizer tuma because it's still tar, and therefore we're going to prove that indeed they weren't goizer tuma on yoytzei. Gemara says, loy, you have no proof, because tahor umutter. The yoytzei mechabur lechabur lav ki yoytzei lechutz lemechitzas dami v'lo mifsil. You can't compare taking the meat out from one chabura to another chabura to that when one takes out the carbon from to outside of the walls of Yerushalayim. The Hakatani Seifa asked the Gemara, but the Seifa teaches one who eats, he's going to be oiver loisase. Here we're talking about l'chara, it's possible and it's still tor. Bishlam lamanda omer bebeitza the east be kezayis veles be kebeitza. You can go ahead and doicha and say, according to the one the omer who says kebeitza, you can say it only has a kezayis and not kebeitza. But the other opinion, what are you going to say? So here we're saying that it's possible and it's tor. Says the Gemara, Ella beyoytze bepesach lo miboilon. Rather, you're right. We're not asking about being yoytze, the carbon pesach, outside the walls of Yerushalayim. That's not the question. The Lord goes rabbanon tuma, because they did not goiz their tuma on taking the carbon pesach outside the Yerushalayim. That they did not do. My time, why not? Because b'nei chabura is rizin hein umazir zihiribe. Because the b'nei chabura, they themselves are zrizin. They're together with the chabura. Each one's going to make sure that they don't take it out from their makom, from their chabura. And therefore, there's no reason to be goizer. The question is, in regard to taking kachim out, including carbon pesach, is there a gezerah of tuma on that which goes out? On that which goes out, where it goes there tuma or not? Take the Gemara leaves it as a standing question.